All right. Hello, everybody coming in. Hello, 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 hello. See lots of people pouring into our event. We're just going to wait a minute as all of our participants, all of our audience come into the event. Hello, everybody. Hello. Thank you for joining us tonight. There's probably a few more on their way in, but I'm just going to go ahead and get started. My name is Gibson Fay LeBlanc, and on behalf of Maine Writers and Publishers Alliance and Print, a bookstore, thank you for joining us. We're really excited to be here tonight to help launch Paul Doiron's new book. Yes. So I'm going to do some quick introductions, and then I'm going to hand it off to Paul and Julia and let them take over. We will take questions, which you can put over the chat. You can put it in through the Q&A. You can raise a hand, and if we see it, we'll try to call on you when it gets to that point. Any of those will work. And we will also, of course, put in the chat a link to buy Paul's book. I think you can buy a signed copy from Print, and they will get it to you as soon as they can. So without further ado, on with the show. As many of you probably know, Paul Doiron is the author of the Mike Bowditch series, including the first, The Poacher's Son, which won the Barry Award and the Strand Critics Award, and Stay Hidden, the 10th, which was the USA Today bestseller, and the 11th, One Last Lie, was officially released yesterday. And from what we hear, there are already people emailing him with questions and thoughts because they've finished the book. A long, long while ago, Paul was also the director of the Maine Writers and Publishers Alliance. He is also the editor emeritus of Down East, the magazine of Maine, and a registered Maine guide specializing in fly fishing. And joining Paul tonight is Julia Spencer-Fleming, New York Times bestselling author of 6 books, including Once Was a Soldier, and her most recent, Hid From Our Eyes, which just came out in April, in which we were on at an event very similar to this one with the two of them just a short while ago. So we're really excited, and I'm going to step back out of the way and let Paul and Julia take it away.
Okay.
I'm waiting for the screen to magically change. Also, I'm going to turn my light on. So hello there. It's nice to be back again. Once more in the new reality in which we're living, in which we get to launch our books over the airwaves instead of appearing in person in bookstores. So this is what's the run up to this been like for you? You know, this is your 11th book. You've obviously done this. I know you've toured. How's this feeling to you differently?
I have to tell you, it's a little bit of a relief. You know, before we had begun to plan the tour before the pandemic, and it was going to be the usual thing where I was going to be bouncing back and forth from Scottsdale, Arizona to like Vero Beach, Florida to Ann Arbor, Michigan, and of course all the Maine things too. And it just like, you know, I really enjoy that piece of things. I like meeting the readers in person, but you know, it is tiring, and it's just been strange, like to have this event, and I only needed to get ready for it, you know, half an hour ago. It's like I had an entire day. There was no travel involved. You know, it was pretty good.
Yeah, I like this, you know, I like these events because, you know, I take a little bit longer because I actually put on makeup for these things, which I see you don't do. But yeah, it is. And I also love, one of the things I really love about these is that people from towns where our publisher is never going to send you or me get to jump on and take part in this. And this is basically the same sort of thing we would do if we were sitting in front of you in a bookstore, but we get to do it, you know, for everybody, anywhere. who wants to go. So let's talk about Mike Bowditch. He's back. It's the 11th book. I am glad that Gibson said that. I didn't know how far you were up to, and it is amazing to me. Not amazing that it's been such a long stretch, because it was, you know, highly acclaimed series from the start. But how old is Mike now?
He's 31.
He's really?
Yeah, he started as 24 and he's 31 now. So I don't know. You know, there was a point where I thought we were going to be aging at the same speed, and at this, his development has been arrested, as readers tell me.
In more than one way.
In more than one way.
In more than one way. Although, you know, he has changed. You know, you can see a difference in him in you know, the previous books. In the first book, he is really callow, and I know that you've spoken about writing the journey of someone on their way to becoming a hero. There are probably a lot of people listening who haven't heard that. So would you address that?
Sure. Kind of the short version of this is that when I was writing The Poacher's Son, I didn't know that I was writing the beginning of a series, and my agent was great enough to sell it as the first book of a 3-book contract. And I was in this weird place where I said, oh my God, you know, this character, he's so damaged, and you know, he's self-destructive, and he's reckless, and he's independent-minded, and all this sort of stuff. I'm like, nobody's going to stick around to read a series about this guy unless he changes. And then that focused me on this idea that, maybe I could really make use of that and just make as sort of the central focus of the whole series how Mike grows up, you know, personally and professionally, so that it's really about his journey as a character, and you're sort of watching him make mistakes and learn from his mistakes. And my writing style, you know, consciously has changed over the course of the 11 books. I mean, some of it is just maybe becoming a better writer, but you know, other parts of it really are just, I'm trying to suggest that somebody who is growing up and is smarter and more better educated and more confident too. I think that's the other thing, is sort of having a confidence in that narrative voice.
Yeah. You know, it's one of the things that I remember really being attracted to with the first book, and then seeing it as you continued on, is the fact that Mike does like dumb things. He does things where you as the reader are like, don't do that. No, you know, whether it involves women, or it involves, you know, drinking, or it involves just, you know, bursting in self-righteously to his boss, which is something, you know, I've got a son who just turned 26 recently, and, you know, I can personally attest that, you know, it's like with the men that age, you just want to go, what is and it's so refreshing, because so much of mystery of detectives, whether your detective is an amateur or professional, it's about the person who's like on top of things. You know, they're always asking the right questions. They may be misled, they're chasing the wrong leads, but they're, you know, they're not setting feet wrong. They're not making things worse by doing things that you know, makes the reader go, don't go down in that basement.
Yeah.
And it's really, really refreshing to me. I love seeing a character that does it. And it makes it so much, it also makes the mystery so much more interesting, because not only does Mike have to untangle what's really going on, but he also has to, over the course of the series, learn to get out of his own way.
Right. Yeah. You know, and frankly, there are some readers who just don't want that. They, you know, they really fixate on the fact that they find him frustrating, to the point where it's just like, it's not fun for them, you know, because because he's not a Jack Reacher or whatever. And that's fine. That's a great thing about our genre, right? Is that there's something for everybody. But I think I've heard from a lot more readers who have appreciated Mike for his flaws than have groused about his flaws,
Yeah.
And oftentimes when I get an email from somebody who really doesn't like him and is very judgmental, I'm always thinking to myself, boy, that tells me a lot more about you than it does about Mike Bowditch. So it's like, yeah, probably he's not the protagonist for you.
Yeah, I get some of those also because I have a main character who is a very impulsive person and who does things sort of by the seat of her pants and then makes things worse. And I thought it was, it's such a human trait. It's such a very human trait to just go ahead, especially for some people, and think, yeah, I know what I'm going to do, and act on it. And then
well, I think, and Claire is much more relatable because of her flaws, and because of the challenges that she has. So yeah, I hear you. I think that
as is Mike. So I was really, really happy when I saw the first blurbs for this, and I realized that this is going to be a Charley book.
Yeah.
Because I think Charley is just a great character, and he's like the complete. If you put Paul Bowditch into some sort of Star Trek like transporter thing, and then you turned him into the exact opposite, it would kind of be Charley.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about the character for people who don't know, and sort of where you're going with this.
Yeah, I mean, Charley is, since the very first book, has been this mentor for Mike. There's this, I don't know what it is. I hear it's a Zen saying or whatever, but I don't know that. I don't know. It's probably just something from a meme. But when the student is ready, the teacher arrives.
Will appear, yeah.
Yeah, and that was Mike in the Poacher Studies. He was ready for a teacher, and that teacher is Charley. Who is sort of the everything that Mike's real father, Jack, was not.
Yeah.
He's comfortable in his own skin, and he's really woodsy. He loves his wife dearly. He's a pilot, just really skilled pilot. In this book, I've disclosed a little bit of this before, but he was an O-1 bird dog pilot in the Vietnam War, that was a light aircraft that would fly surveillance at the treetops to sort of see what the NVA were doing, Viet Cong were doing, and we learned that he was actually in the Hanoi Hilton, and like Mike did not know after all these years that his mentor was in the Hanoi Hilton, and it was like because Charley just didn't think that was worth sharing with him. He's like, So, I've moved on, and that's something I really admire. I've had a lot of guys in my life who've just been older mentors who've taught me about the woods, who've taught me about airplanes, who've taught me just about about living.
I think I think it's that, and this is something I've thought a lot about because it's what my most recent book really is about in a fundamental way, is that I think young men need older men to teach them how to be men. Women sort of fall into being women. But men need, I see this so much in real life. Men need these models, and they're hungry for them, and they're thirsty for it. And so, especially at the beginning, Mike is like a little gosling or something. He's totally ready to imprint on Charley because he's so desperate for that connection, that father figure, and then somebody to show him, look, this is you have an idea of what you want to be. Let me show you how to do it, and how you can do it, and how you can live this life.
Right. And the thing is that they've had this very close mentoring relationship over the course of the series, and with One Last Lie, I wanted to kind of revisit it, but also give it a twist. And it's it's about, Mike, he's in Florida on a Warden Service kind of mission, and gets called back by Charley's wife, Aura, because Charley has kind of gone off on his own private investigation, and he hasn't told Aura what it's about, and Mike has no idea what it's about until he begins to sort of track him and put some pieces together and talk to, other people from Charley's long life, and he's learning things about this guy that he, considers basically his surrogate father, who, that he never knew before. And it's a bit of there's revelations around every corner. And meanwhile, he's desperately worried that Charley has gone looking for a really dangerous killer who's managed to get away with murder for 15 years and is smart enough to know that, justice may be coming for him, and be prepared to take violent action when that happens.
Yeah, it's interesting. When you were talking about that, and it makes me think that's really, see, the trick is with crime fiction is we're really writing like novels about people and their lives, but we just throw a lot of murder and stuff in to keep it going, keep it interesting, because that's such a, that discovering all these things about your parent that you didn't know or you didn't understand, as you get older, that is part of the work. That's part of your life's work, to become an adult yourself. We all need to move beyond the sort of, first we idolize our parents, and then we think they're idiots, and then we're sort of back to they're all knowing, but eventually you get to a healthy point where you see the good and the bad, and
you see them as people.
Yeah.
I think that's it. That's what this book is at its heart. And I always start every novel asking myself, okay, where is Mike in this book? Where is he personally and professionally to start, and where is he going to be at the ending?
Yeah.
And his relationship with Charley, I can't give anything away, but it just, how he thinks about Charley changes over the course of this book, and I hope in a way that feels real and compelling.
Well, you want that story arc. So I also don't want to give anything away, so I'll let you figure out how much you want to say about this, but in One Last Lie, we also see the reappearance of a woman who's been extremely important in Mike's life. Is that vague enough if you don't want to talk about it?
I will spoil a little bit there. Yeah, back in the end of my, God, what book was end of Knife Creek, which was whatever book was that, number 9. Mike has been in a relationship with Aura and Charley's daughter Stacey for several years, and before that he was desperately infatuated and then in love with her, and that didn't work out, and she went off to Florida because she's somebody who runs when things get hot, and she was down in the Everglades overseeing a Florida panther protection project. She's, the thing about Aura, about Charley and Stacey that I say a lot of times is that they're the kind of people who really like to fight for lost causes. That's kind of what really energizes them.
Mm-hmm.
And so Mike, as I said, starts the book in South Florida. He's doing a background check on somebody who's applied to be the chief warden pilot, which was not coincidentally the role that Charley had once. And the fact that I chose for Mike to do this in Florida, where I had previously sent Stacey, this was several books in the planning, so this was not something that I just didn't just sort of spark over my head about a year
So
ago.
we can tell the readers it's the book you've been waiting for,
or not.
or the book you've been waiting for.
I mean, that's one of the things I really do try to do with the series is, my editor especially is good at helping me to write novels that hopefully can be picked up and enjoyed on their own.
Mm-hmm.
But I really enjoy sort of, it's almost like playing chess a little bit, where you make a move that's only going to pay off five moves down the line or 5 books down the line. And so yeah, those are some of the stories I really most enjoy telling.
I enjoy that as well, although I am now behind you in the number of books written. But there is a great pleasure in, especially when you've got you've established a cast of characters, and at this point there's a whole there is a whole cast of characters, all these people who are satellites who move in and out of Mike's life, and some sort of antagonistically, and others being people he loves and people who help him, and it is wonderful to be able to kind of set seeds, and if nothing comes of it, it doesn't have to, but then maybe it will, and then you've got this character that you can bring back again or bring forward, and it's this wonderful feeling of felicity when that happens. Like
and you do it too, and
yeah,
and I know we're both admirers of Louise Penny, who a lot of who's the thing that people really love about Louise are all the secondary characters.
Oh yeah,
They're good at that.
Yeah,
at that piece of things, and they're almost just as central to any one of the stories as Gamache is, and
yeah.
the other.
She does a great job at. You discover that secondary characters have these like lives and secrets that you didn't hear about before, but you totally believe it. Unlike the Fast and Furious movies, where all of a sudden somebody shows up and they've got a brother that you never heard about, a sister you never heard about. We started watching those and shut down. So
there's a lot of things that we're watching. I've caught up on like 18 seasons of Top Chef.
That is not what I would picture you watching.
Well, I'll tell you that Padma Lakshmi has helped pull me along from season to season.
Yeah. You're not watching the big like Guy Fiorini doing his stuff, right? All right. So, I had a question. What was it? Maine. So Maine, our state. And you were like the most Maine writer right now, I think there possibly can be.
Maybe.
And so you have tended to feature different parts of our state, which is very exciting, certainly as someone who lives here. In a lot of fiction, there are narrow slices of Maine that get shown. A lot of fiction about the coast. Kennebunk, Portland, up into the mid-coast region, and not a lot about Washington County, for instance. And you've done things. You've done a book set in Washington County. You've done a book in the very suburban, outside of Portland area. So tell us about where Mike is going to wind up. What part of Maine do we get to experience this time around?
So the book starts in the Everglades, but it ends in the St. John River Valley, which is the northernmost part of the state, and it's part of Aroostook County, but it's culturally it's separate from the rest of the county because it was founded by these essentially Acadian refugees. The British were deporting the Acadians from Nova Scotia and New Brunswick. I'm Acadian. That's my last name. Doiron is an Acadian name, and so that valley was settled by these French-speaking people, and they created a really vibrant, unique culture there. That's it's changed, and it's been fractured by hardening of the border between Canada and the U.S., but it's distinctive from the rest of Aroostook County too. And I just really felt like the time had come for me to try to get a sense of that. I mean, it's a place that that I've spent less time than some of the others that I've written about. Although I don't know, maybe it was my inner French soul,
Calling out to you.
Calling out to me to.
Allons-y, Paul. Viens avec moi.
But the people there are great. I mean, and that's the thing, is that even occasionally I'll hear from people thinking that I'm sort of too hard on main characters in my books, Maine with an E. Mm-hmm. And it's like, no, I mean, it's all with affection.
Yeah.
And, some of the characters that other people think of as being, I don't know, grotesque or something, are like the ones that I find most relatable, and a lot of times they're also the most real. It's like they're based on somebody.
Yeah. I think if you live in Maine, there are characters that you absolutely recognize. If you don't know them personally, mm-hmm. then you know of them, or yep. someone who knows someone, and it strikes me as very real. And that's something that we've talked about before, I think usually over dinner, but how refreshing it is to see this really, it's a very loving, but also extremely clear-eyed and realistic look at Maine. And it's so refreshing from a state that is so often gets, it's the setting for somebody's summer beach house novel, or it's the mystery takes place in Blueberry Kettle Cove or something, god awful like that. And it doesn't really reflect what this state is like year round. This huge state. I think, are we like the largest state east of the Mississippi? So,
No? We're almost the size of the rest of New England combined.
So, just this vast state.
And here, this good fun fact, you can use this at trivia night. Maine is the same size as Portugal.
I didn't know that.
Yes, few people.
That is amazing.
So yeah.
And they like seafood too. It's like with the same thing. So did you get up to the St. John Valley to do research for this? What'd you do?
Oh yes, yeah. I went up several times, and of course this is the other piece of it that a lot of people, especially from southern Maine, don't realize, is that from Portland, New York City is closer than Fort Kent is, and I was just actually up in the woods west of Ashland, which is pretty far up there. It was about 5.5 hours from where I live in Camden.
Wow, that's
last week, and at a place that was very much like a pond that's featured in this book, to the point where it was almost like I had not visited before, but before I wrote the chapters, but now I'm like, oh my God, it was the setting, somehow I intuited this place. But yeah, it's a long haul. I do have some family connection there. My great uncle was the parish priest in Senegat, which is just south of Fort Kent for many years. And I was telling Rob Caldwell on 207 the other night, his name, believe it or not, was Romeo Doiron.
Wow.
Yes. Yeah.
Father Romeo?
Father Romeo, Father Romy. Yeah. But my great uncles and aunts and everything had wonderful French names. I mean, my Aunt Aline, and my dad had an Uncle Fiddlin, which I don't even know how to spell. I think there was a PH in there, but it's just like the family patriarch who on my Quebecois side, his name was Telesphore, Telespphore. That was his first name.
We need to bring these names back.
We do, yeah. I think
it's hard. It would be hard to put something like that in a book, though, because people would not believe it. I mean, if you had a priest named Father Romeo, they'd be like, "Oh, pull the other one. Real
Yeah.
life being too much. No, I have lived in Maine now well over 30 years, and it wasn't until my youngest went to Maine School for Science and Mathematics
Okay.
up in Limestone that I ever sort of crossed the great boundary divide. You know, I've been up to Bangor, been up to, you know, Bar Harbor, that whole area, and then you go up past that, and it's always astonishing to me. I mean, it's like a different country. I mean, literally, it could be a different country. If things had fallen out differently after, you know, the War of 1812, we could be part of Canada.
Sure.
And you know, the area it looks different, it feels different, it smells different, and then of course you have what I'm sure all of your readers love, which are these vast spaces that can just swallow people whole, and you know, you can disappear and just never be seen again.
Yeah, Aroostook County people, I mean, I think everybody has this idea that, you know, you drive north in Maine and you enter the North Woods, and the North Woods just continue all the way to Canada. And anybody who's been to Aroostook County knows that, you know, there's sort of this, that feels true as you're sort of passing Baxter State Park, and then you get to around Island Falls or something, and suddenly there's farms and vast, flat, you know, acres of all kinds of different things, certainly potatoes. And, you know, and that's the other thing about it. I mean, some of the towns up that way, you know, Caribou, Presque Isle, whatever, have very suburban feels to them.
Yeah, Presque Isle felt very, you know, suburban to me, which is sort of unexpected. I'm not sure what I thought, maybe like Fiddlers or something.
Well, the thing is, of course, is that these communities are bumping up against Canada, and Canada's population, of course, is clustered right along its own southern border. So, you know, the more you begin to think about it, the more sense it makes, right? Is that, you know, their orientation is towards the most settled part of
right.
Canada. Yeah.
Right, towards the north. So I'm trying to think of what else we want to talk about, what readers want us to talk about. We should, I'm seeing some things coming up. Yes, Presque Isle does have the university. Someone is coming up in the chat there. And I saw, I don't know if you did, but there's somebody who is watching this from Portage Lake.
Oh,
I assume.
I was just there.
Yeah.
Really, I was a week ago Friday.
So I want to ask you a question that is sort of been coming up in discussions of late. I assume that you're working on the next book. I hope you're working on the next book, or maybe you're really good and it's already turned in. Do you turn yours in before the book comes out? Good,
No.
thank you.
I'm not late, but it's a mad scramble that last month. So.
But I know that a lot of people are, a lot of us in our profession are talking about what are we doing going forward, writing law enforcement in a deeply changing culture now. And of course, the Maine Warden Service is, in some ways, it feels very different from a lot of other LEO agencies. But on the other hand, you know, it still is. So I'm just curious. I've had this asked of me, and I'm curious about how my peers are doing it. You know, what are you doing with that? Not necessarily in the book you're finishing up now, but thinking about for the next one.
Well, you know, certainly it's on my mind. I mean, the weird thing, I'm sure you've had this happen to you too, is that you'll write a book and it'll feel like you're just sort of, you're writing about things that just interest you and don't have any topicality, you know? And then when the book comes out, suddenly there's all this topical stuff in it that you can't imagine, right? And so, you know, what Mike is doing, he's a warden investigator at this stage of his career. And one of the jobs of the warden investigators is to do the background checks on people applying to become wardens. And Mike actually says that, yeah, there's a panel, a hiring panel, there's a polygraph operator, there's a psychologist, all these people that the applicant is going to have to get through, but ultimately it's on him to keep an unfit person from getting a badge and a gun.
Right.
And I'm like, that's the whole thing we're talking about these days, is like, what can we do as a culture, right, to keep unfit people from either getting a badge and a gun or keeping badges and guns.
Yeah.
So that was just really wild, the way that sort of has kind of tracked. But yeah, I think the biggest thing about Mike is the Warden Service is it's, it stands within and without of the larger law enforcement community in Maine. And even there, Mike has always been an outsider. And so he's been able to he's, even when he's wanted to be sort of part of the culture, he's never fully been comfortable in it. It just, just not who he is.
And you definitely have in the past, and I think this is also important too, you have not idealized the sort of the cop culture. I mean, he has run into corruption before. He's run into bad wardens. He's run into people who are abusing their power. He's, and I think that helps. I mean, I feel like when I was asked this, I said, well, I feel like I've had bad cops before, and I've had people doing things badly. I'm like, well, at least I don't have to suddenly, they're not all like Dudley Do-Right, but
yeah, it does. I don't think it gets us off the hook, but ultimately, I don't know that my thinking will change, is changing, right? And yet, what I've been trying to do all along has been to create characters that are as multifaceted as I can, and law enforcement officers are are people, and they're complicated and complex and self-contradicting and all that sort of thing. And it's I think this is a moment where it's natural for the focus to be on law enforcement as in capital letters, and certain sort of communities that that have been abused by people in power. But unless you're writing about right in that where those things come together, it's. I mean, I don't ever see myself writing an issue book, along those lines,
Really? Because, I mean,
well,
I wouldn't say that you write issue books, but you've written books that have real issues in them.
I do, but I guess what I'm trying to say is it's something that, boy, it's like, I don't know that I'm up to that. I can think of writers who, for instance, who are former law enforcement officers, who can bring a lot more knowledge to that kind of a story than I can. And it's not to say that I won't. It's just that at the moment, it's people have asked me too, like, right, about the coronavirus. It's like, oh, are you going to work the coronavirus into one of your books? And I'm like, too soon.
Yeah. I think we all feel that too. It's like nobody wants to read about the coronavirus. One, it is too soon, and two, it manages to be both horrifying and dull all at the same time. It's like the news is horrifying, but all you're doing is sitting at home and wondering if they're going to have the pasta that you want when you get to the Hannaford. Finally. So I've got my little clock going up here, and we're getting close to 50 minutes. And I see Gibson has popped up there, so I figured it's probably a good time if we've got some questions to go on.
Yeah, we do. We've got a bunch of questions coming in, so I will throw some your way. Let's see here. We had a question about the different locations in your books, Paul, and you guys have talked a bunch about that. It's great to hear that. I was curious, as sort of a extension of the question that came in, which I think you already answered. What about the next one? What do you have a list of main locations? You know, is it an excuse to go explore places or go back to places, or you know, how does that, you know, how does the next one get chosen? I'm curious.
Yeah, the next one, it's a very specific place. I can't really share it with you because it's not, for two reasons. One is it's still sort of, I'm still figuring out where it is specifically, but also because it's not a sexy place, let's put it that way, right? It's not Baxter State Park. It's not Acadia National Park. It's not something.
It's Buxton, isn't it? It's Buxton, Paul.
That's the only reason I'm not telling you. I'm at this in this chat now. Yeah.
It's my house.
Fair enough. Go ahead, Julia. You want to?
I was going to say, I have to ask Paul a question that I always think of is that, do you ever regret, because I do sometimes, that you've chosen to set this, you know, this series that is like really, really deeply embedded in Maine, everything that is Maine. And then you hear about, I mean, we have peers who are going off to, I have friends who go like to Venice to research theirs, or to the Bahamas. And, you know, do you ever feel like, gee, he really ought to go to St. Thomas and St. Croix to investigate like tortoise smuggling or something?
I could kick him up to the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service and make him an enforcement agent there, and he could deal with that stuff. Yeah, you know, it is one of those funny things, because I think that's the whole just the screwy part of writing a series is that I think almost everybody that I know who writes a series, you know, when you start it, you just can't imagine continuing it over the course of multiple books, and then how it changes, how you change, how the world changes. I mean, it's an interesting kind of challenge, and there's a lot of sort of looking back and saying, I could have gone in a very different direction.
That's right.
I was curious about that as well for both of you, since you've both dug in with beloved characters over a long time. Is, you know, and maybe it's too far off in the future, but at what point do you start to see a horizon line, or, you know, start to see like, oh, maybe I know, maybe it's a few books away still, but I have an idea of where this person might be headed eventually. Has that happened for either of you at all? Do you get a glimmer, or is it just too far away and you just one book at a time?
I've talked a lot about this, is that when I started the series, I thought it was going to be 12 books, you know, one for every month of the year. And I'm currently writing book 12, which would make it the last of the series. Mm-hmm. And yet I have a contract for a 13th book. So that idea has gone out the window. But it was partly because I don't think at the time, I mean, I could never have imagined writing 12 books. I mean, I still can't believe I've written 11 books. So, you know, do I plot, do I foresee an ending? You know, not as long as I find Mike interesting to me. Mm-hmm. And I feel like I'm also one of those few writers too who just hasn't felt the need to take a break from it. I know a lot of authors do, and I may, you know. What about you, Julia? What do you think?
Oh, I agree. I mean, so I, like you, thought that my first book was sort of a standalone. And then it sold, and I was told that it was the first in a series. And then I always envisioned mine as being 5 books, because I figured that was about as long as I could go with will they or won't they, which is kind of the big central character question there. And then I got to that point and I answered that question. I discovered I had a lot more to say. So I would agree that as long as, I think the important thing is if you can keep thinking of stories you really want to tell that can be told with these characters in this setting, then it goes on. I mean, the time, I think, to cut it off is when the reason you're doing it is because you're getting offered a contract. I mean, contracts are lovely. I'm working under contract as well. But I think we've all read series where the authors sort of run out of steam. So, which I think might be the reasons that sometimes there are people who move in and out of their series. You know, one book here, one book there.
All right, here's another one. A great question over chat, Paul. There's somebody who's calling you out here a little bit. No, not in a bad way at all. I think you'll like this question. So Mike Bowditch knows how to hunt, dress, fish, track, ski, shoot, kayak, canoe. He is always doing some outdoor skill in each novel. Does Paul know how to do all these things as well?
I know how to do most of those things to varying degrees of competency, I would say. So yeah, you know, I mean, it's interesting. It's like, am I, you know, Mike can, he's not me, you know, he can do more than I can do. But I would say that I'm a better fisherman than Mike Bowditch. I'm happy to compete against him. Anytime he has my number, you know, he can call me. We'll go out and
back to the question sort of about series. Here's somebody who says, when you finish the Mike Bowditch series, God forbid, please not soon, would you consider writing another series with one of the characters from this series? If so, which one would it be?
Yeah, that's a good question. You know, it's something that I don't know, Julia, if you've ever gotten this. I think sometimes, yeah, publishers will sort of have or editors, I would say, would have this in mind. You know,
yeah, my agent has suggested it. Yeah,
agents too, yeah, will sort of be thinking about, oh, that character could be, but of course the challenge would be, you know, you'd want to have to be able to do something that was different enough that it felt like it was worth going, you know, following a different character. You know, I don't know. No,
you know, you could do, you were mentioning, you know, have Mike go into the national, you could have another character
true,
doing that. And then you've got the character, but you're spinning off in a completely different location. And then you can go to nice, warm places. You know?
One of the things I've done with some short stories is I've written them about Charley Stevens and his life, and those have felt almost like I'm doing a different series when I'm writing those. They're typically in the third person, and those are always feeling like really nice changes of pace.
Maria Padian added in, how about a prequel? How about a prequel with Jack?
What's a prequel with Jack? Yeah.
Wow.
I had thought of it. I have thought of that. Jack is Mike's father.
Yeah,
he is the poacher of the poacher's son. So yeah. There's
just 350 pages of him drinking, you know, getting women pregnant, and
yeah, I'd have to
jacking deer.
I'd have to find his soul before it was broken.
So let's see. Anne says, greetings from Moosehead. Read a review of your first book in Bangor Daily News from camp a long time ago. love Mike and to pass that on to my son who moved to Maine and has a real 1-year-old Mainer.
Oh,
And she wants to know, are you born and raised in Maine? Or I know you talked about your family earlier, but she wants to know.
I'm the Doirons are Sanford people. We French Canadians who came to work in the mills of what is it? I'm drawing a blank on the name of those mills. But yes, it's I've spent my life here, and it's with just a couple of I went away, of course, to college, and then graduate school, and then I lived a year in Hollywood. Back after I graduated from college, I had fantasies of getting into screenwriting, and but I can't imagine another. I mean, I feel this is the place I'm meant to be.
Absolutely.
This is the way life should be.
Solange, who's the one from Portage Lake, says that she sees, how does your own reading inform your writing? I see many Japanese poetry books on your shelves.
Those are my wife's. Yes, this is the high rent part of our house here. Yeah, my wife is a poet, and she's a Japanophile and actually a really accomplished writer of haiku and haibun. My own writing, reading it. When I'm writing, I sometimes it can be pretty hard for me to read fiction, so I sort of tend to read the fiction when I'm not working on a novel. When I'm working on a novel, as I am now, I read a lot of nonfiction, and so and I listen to audiobooks and things. And so, for instance, the audio that I'm listening to is Nate Silver's book, "The Signal and the Noise," about probabilities and predictions and Bayesian reasoning and that sort of thing. And the book I'm reading is Colin Woodard's new book, Union, which is about sort of how we came up with, or how several people contributed to this idea, this sort of narrative of the United States as a coherent place when it's anything but. And at the moment, it's feeling very anything but, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think we just have time for one more. And so last question, how about some best writing advice from each of you that you got maybe, or something you just figured out along the way? It could be crime writing, could be some other kind of writing, something that stuck with you.
Julia, I know you have something that you.
Well, my first advice would be do not go for 6 years without producing a novel. It's supposed to be. What do I tell my students when I teach writing? I like to say that there's an old saw that's write what you know. And I think what that means is write what you know about being human. Mm. You can write about aliens, your characters can be, hobbits, they can be animals. You need to write what you know about being human. And I think that what in crime fiction specifically, that's what, speaking of writing animals, in crime fiction particularly, what readers crave are characters. It's not about the puzzle anymore. They want people that they love, that they want to follow along, that they want to see how they, grow and change, and turn out. And they want to get to the end of the book. As you were saying, you'd already gotten emails. People want to get to the end of the book and immediately go, oh, now what's going to happen to Mike? Oh my God, I can't stand it. And they do that with the character, not because you've solved a mystery.
Yeah. I would, I think my piece of advice will be a little bit different, which is, I for one thing, I don't teach writing, and it's so I kind of come at this a little bit differently than many, but I always emphasize just perseverance. You know, especially if you have aspiration. Well, anything that you want to write. I mean, you know, as I always say, it's like there are millions of people who want to write a novel, you know, and there are also millions of people who start writing a novel, and then you get to hundreds of thousands who continue writing a novel, and you know, now you're getting into the tens of thousands of people who completed a novel. and so your chances of success improve the more you kind of work at it and see things through. You know, like once you have a draft of a book, now you have something that you can edit and show it to people as a coherent whole. And also that applies to the publishing process and having some kind of a career, whatever you want that career to look like, you know, whether it's supposed to be, it's financially sustaining or not, you know, it's just like, you know, you're going to need to kind of just keep at it and, you know, and just put your head down and just continue to do the writing and continue to get stuff out, and then, you know, be open to hearing the critiques and processing stuff, and you take the things that are useful and you use it, and you discard the rest. And it's, you know, it's a journey, you know, that you embark on, and it's not over. You know, you don't write a book and that's it. You know, it's not. I guess unless you're Harper Lee. But there was only one Harper Lee.
Yeah. That's a great place to end. And there was, just on that note too, there was a great book about the story that she didn't end up finishing, that she spent so long on. It was a book last year. Anyways, true crime. Thank you both. That was wonderful. And everybody should go buy a copy of both of these books. Get a signed copy of Paul's book from print. And I think we are going to sign off. So, yeah, there it is.
Oh, thank you.
Good product placement.
Yes, thank you. I appreciate everybody tuning in tonight.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.